I know it's something, it's always really heartening for me to know that you guys are holding it down here, you know? It's just like, thank you. So appreciate it. So this is the third in our series of 6. We have 3 in the spring and 3 in the fall. And the theme is the intersection between Buddhism and shamanism. And primarily we're looking at things that are similar in the two traditions. And so far we've looked at the fact that both of them are a psychology of wholeness. And we explored the way in which the center of wholeness in shamanism is the earth herself, and in Buddhism is Buddha nature, or the ground luminosity in the clear light. And then we also looked at the role of initiation in both systems, where we have the taking refuge in Buddhism as a major refuge, as a major initiation. And we talked about the definition of initiation, where you're leaving one state of being and moving into a new state of being. And so in Buddhism, you're stepping out of samsara and cyclic existence, and you're taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the sangha, these states of greater, more enlightened awareness. And in shamanism, the forms of initiation generally take place through some kind of visionary experience, and either a vision that arises spontaneously, a dream, a vision quest. It also can be an initiatory moment, can be when you have some kind of calamity or some kind of illness that you have to heal from, and then that becomes an initiatory moment where you're stepping out of one way of being into a new way of being. And last time we explored vision quests as one of the many initiations in shamanic practice. And so this evening we're going to be looking at dreams. And I did my doctoral thesis on dreams, so I know a little bit about them.
Don't you have a book about dreams?
I have a book called Depth Hypnosis that talks a lot about dreams. But the more important thing to know about me and dreams is that in the 3rd grade, when they told us we could choose any subject to write our first report on, my first report was on dreams. So I've been thinking about them a while. And as I mentioned, Depth Hypnosis is the book Depth Hypnosis, A Path to Healing, Power, and Transformation. It just came out. But Depth Hypnosis is a spiritual counseling model that I created, which is itself very much an intersection of Buddhism, shamanism, energy medicine, and hypnotherapy. And in Depth Hypnosis, the dreams are some of the most important aspects of the healing process. And we always ask people to watch their dreams, especially as they're coming into the first session. And I would say 40% of the thousands of individual sessions that I've done over the last several decades have been almost entirely guided by dreams, listening to what the dreams are showing and then tracking into the psyche what the dreams are pointing to. So I've been listening to dreams for a little while, and I thought I would sort of share with you the way that both Buddhism works with dreams, primarily through dream yoga, and the way that shamanic practice works with dreams. And then I thought we might do some dream interpretation if you want to. I have a method of dream interpretation that's really more about asking questions. And having spent an interesting moment in my life that I hadn't expected to fall into was when I was studying at the Institut Catholique de Paris in Paris. It's the Catholic Institute there, which is basically a continuing education, or at the time in the 70s, it was a continuing education institution for missionaries in the colonies, right? So I fell into this amazing thing where all of these people were telling me about all of the spiritual practices and all the colonies, and I'm putting that in quotes, please, I'm not being politically incorrect, but that's the way they were referred to. And there was all shamanic practice. So here we are in the heart of the Catholic education system with all of this shamanic practice, and Marie-Louise von France, which was one of Jung's main students, teaching. She was teaching in German, and my German wasn't great, but I got quite a bit from it. So, and she really talked a lot about dreams. So I spent a long time with all these Jungians in that great mythological space where, you have to really know your Greek mythology in order to interpret the dreams. So through that, I developed, through all these practices, I've developed this method of working with dreams that we will try to work with later if you're interested. And it sounds like we have someone who's dreaming a lot who might need some help with the dream. So we will talk about dreams. So let's talk first about Buddhism and dreams. So I'm sure all of you who've been exposed to Buddhism have heard about dream yoga. And dream yoga is a very interesting practice, which essentially extends the meditation practice into the night. And you never sleep again. That's been my problem. I got so far to dream yoga. I'm like, trying to wake myself up in the dreams. Sorry. But anyway, so the idea, well, there's a lot of ideas with dream yoga, but there's a lot of different practices that are pointed to within the practice. First and foremost, so basically what dream yoga is becoming aware of that you are dreaming. Becoming aware and maintaining awareness as you move from waking sleep, beta awareness, into that relaxed sleep of alpha, into the state of theta, and then into delta, that deepest sleep. And one aspect of dream yoga is to maintain awareness at every level as you're falling asleep, and so that you never sleep again. So my experience is I had to abandon dream yoga because I really wasn't sleeping because I was trying so hard. Sorry, I'm a little PTSD about it. I'll stop repeating it. But it is pretty amazing practice, and it does extend the opportunity for your meditation practice. And it's also a way to practice dying. Because the idea with dying, of course, is to be able to shift your awareness into the more and more subtle expressions of your mind, and be able to maintain awareness of that process as you're dying. And this is what, of course, the great masters are able to do. And the idea of dream yoga in terms of this part of the practice is to practice doing that, is to practice maintaining awareness as you get into subtler and subtler levels of experience. So it's a very profound practice if you can keep yourself out of the PTSD. Sorry, so I'll shut up about that. But it is, a better meditator than I would, better be able to really just move through all of those subtle levels of experience, and then move out of them, and then coming back into awareness from theta into alpha, and from delta into theta, into alpha, and then into beta. So in that way, you are extending your awareness of experience to basically 24/7, right? You're like really aware, right? So this is one aspect of dream yoga in Buddhism, very important. Another aspect of Buddhism is of dream yoga is to begin to see your waking experience as a dream and your dream life as real as your waking life. So there's this the sort of the barrier that we put between dreams and real life dissolves. And so one of the practices with dream yoga is, as you're going to sleep at night, to take a moment to review all of the practices of all of the experiences that you've had during the day and to see them as a dream. And then in the morning when you wake up, to focus on all of the dreams that you've had, knowing that they're a dream. And so the idea here is to help you as a Buddhist practitioner to understand the illusory nature of our experience as in our usual waking samsara engaged way of being, and to begin to see the illusion-like nature of much of our engagement in the world, and to be able to loosen our attachment, therefore. So like if you can feel this sense of illusion, that your life may not be as real as you thought it was, and you may not be as real as you thought you were. I mean, that can be really disturbing at first, but then it helps you, especially when you have, in the way that impermanence helps you, like when you're having a hard time, knowing that it's impermanent, it will change. And, knowing that things are not as real as you thought they were, helps you, again, kind of step away from, difficult situations and see them in a new perspective. So this softening of the veil between waking life and sleeping life is dissolved with dream yoga in looking at the dreams in this way. And another aspect of dream yoga, I mentioned being aware, bringing your awareness into each of the levels of sleep. But also there's another aspect of dream yoga that essentially happens in the REM phase of sleep, which is an interesting phase of sleep where you have all of the different variations in awareness that happen in waking life, but it's deep within the dream state. Their practice is to practice lucid dreaming, which is to wake up in the dream. There's usually people have some kind of trigger that will wake them up. Like if they see their hand, and they'll remember I'm dreaming. Or if they see the color blue, then they set that as a trigger to help them wake up in the dream. And the idea with lucid dreaming is, this is just one aspect of the practice, but to be able to direct the dream, to be able to change the outcome of the dream, or to practice having a different outcome than might have been happening in the dream, because you're becoming aware, and you're able to direct your experience in the same way that you do in waking life. We try to direct our experience anyway. We think we're directing our experience. Hopefully we're getting somewhere with that. But with lucid dreaming, that's another aspect of dream yoga. And the idea there, again, is to practice having a more pristine awareness deep within the subtle bodies and subtle experience that lie in the field of sleep and dreams. So there's all these different aspects to dream yoga, and that are very profound and You can really alter your understanding of yourself, the nature of reality, and the nature of your practice. Um, so, um, um, so that's a very, very cursory summary of dream yoga and its role in its place within Buddhist practice. And I just wanted to see if anyone has any questions about that before we head into shamanism.
And we'll use this microphone for questions, not because we can't hear each other, but so that the people online can hear as well. And we can pass it to you.
Anyone have any questions about dream yoga?
I have a question.
So, if you practice lucid dreaming to maybe change the experience you're having in a dream, would that affect you in real life when you're not dreaming to really maneuver your experience?
In real life?
In waking life. In waking life.
Well, I imagine that it might. I think that the main thing with lucid dreaming is that it's a practice to help you be able to direct your awareness at your own choice rather than having your awareness directed by something other than your choice. So if you're practicing that within the lucid dreaming context, then that sense of agency and direction of your awareness would probably improve during the day.
Is dream yoga a practice in all the different schools of Buddhism?
thank you.
It's not just Vajrayana, or is it?
It's mainly, I'm mainly aware of it in the Tibetan schools of Buddhism.
Okay.
I studied Zen for a long time and nobody ever talked about that there.
Okay.
And people talk a lot about it in the Tibetan, but it may exist. It may exist in Shingon in Japan, which has so many similarities to the Vajrayana, but I haven't run into that.
One more question. Is it considered lucid dreaming? Because I don't have the wake up in a dream, and maybe once or twice, not intentionally. But I do wake myself up when I'm having scary bad dreams.
Right, so.
Is
so
that
what-
lucid
So what you
dreaming?
could do,
Uh-huh.
well, what you could do then, as you wake yourself up,
Uh-huh.
then you could, so here's a way to deal with the fear that's coming
Uh-huh.
up in the dream, is to wake yourself up and ask what could be a different outcome here.
Because, yeah, those dreams try to suck you back in.
Right, so
Yeah.
the idea with lucid dreaming, and there's some practices where you practice having a different outcome, or where you practice creating a dream within the lucid dream space. That's that you're actually
Yeah.
generating the dream, as opposed to waking up in the dream and then redirecting it. There's a lot of different practices, but the idea with lucid dreaming, with this practice, is that you would then change the outcome of the fear.
While I'm dreaming.
While you're dreaming, you would change the outcome. So for an example, I was working with a woman who, for years, she had these dreams where there was a very large snake that was chasing her through a jungle canopy. And she would wake up every morning just exhausted and terrified and, just really having a hard time. Now, of course, there's a lot to look at there in terms of what is that fear, where is it arising from within her, where do we need to track it from a depth hypnosis point of view. But simply from a dream yoga point of view, I told her about dream yoga and I talked to her about being able to change the outcome of a dream. And she practiced it and it was pretty remarkable because she had one dream and then another dream where the snake was chasing her through the jungle canopy, and she stopped and she turned around and faced it down and stopped running. And that had a pretty big effect on her sense of well-being. And of course, we were doing some other deeper work around the fear, but that was like a pretty major shift for her, where she felt like she had some agency over an aspect of her experience that she had felt at the mercy of. Cool. So yeah, it's very cool. Yeah, no.
Yeah, I was wondering about what's the relationship between the things you've described so far and exploring hypnagogic states in meditation, or even you know, like the edge of falling asleep during meditation.
Right. Well, so you know, those hypnagogic states that you can, you know, fall into in meditation, or, you know, in dark retreats, you know, people talk a lot about those visions, those kinds of visions coming. They can all be addressed in the same way. And, you know, there's a whole, again, you know, you can practice seeing, okay, this is an illusion, you know, and or you can practice waking up in that state and redirecting the outcome. You know, there's a lot of different ways to work with it. Very similar.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. All right, let me see if there's anything else I want to say about. So, one thing I would say with dream yoga is true with all dream practices. It's important to try to keep a record. So, let me offer you these tips for being able to track your dreams or track your awareness through dreams. So as you're falling asleep at night, give yourself the suggestion that you'll be able to at least remember your dreams or a part of your dream, or even just an emotional experience upon waking. You don't have to remember the whole thing, but just, you know, you can set your intention of what you want to, where you want to work within the dream space, whether it's to wake up in the dream and change the outcome of the dream, or if it's just to remember the dream, or if it's just to try to maintain awareness as you're falling asleep through the different layers of subtle experience. Set your intention, and then have a journal or a recording device right near your bed. And so the minute you wake up, don't go pee, don't turn on the light, just say, you know, where have I been? And then record it immediately. And stay with the practice before you get up and walk around, because it's it's so ephemeral, it can go so quickly. So let me just offer you that. So going to talk a little bit about shamanic ways of working with dreams. Now, as I mentioned before, one of the calls to the path for a shamanic practitioner is the ability to dream. And when you're in a traditional setting where there are, people who are versed in shamanic practice, when they become aware of a younger person who is having big dreams, they will instantly be interested, because the ability to have big dreams is a mark of a shaman. It's many different, I mean, you don't have to have big dreams to be a shaman, but having that capacity is an invitation to the path often. And so within that context, and again, this is looking at dreams from a little bit different way than you traditionally would look at dreams, but in a clinical practice. But the types of dreams that are really kind of highlighted within shamanic practice as being sort of the mark of a big dreamer are the dreams that I call portal dreams or prescient dreams. And the portal dreams are dreams where people who may have passed on come into the dream space and offer information to the dreamer. And so the dream becomes a meeting place for those who have passed on and for those who are still alive. And so the dream becomes a portal because it's because you can see like the dream state, you're altering your state of awareness, you're moving beyond the conscious mind, and you are moving into that larger aspect of the self that the dreams carry you through. And so this larger and more subtle experience of being. And in that place of being, those who have passed on, who have the capacity to be able to move into that portal of the dream, will meet the dreamer. And I'm sure you know someone who's had that experience, or you may have had that yourself. I've had so many clients that have had, as children, and they often wind up in my practice because they have these kinds of dreams, and they're like, what do I do? What do I do? And, like even from like a very young age, I've had clients that, their grandfather came to them as they were sleeping and said goodbye and said, I love you. And then they wake up and they find out that the grandfather had just died, right? It's like, this is not an uncommon experience that people have. And one of the things that, it's often discounted or poo-poo, or, it's like, that's just, but if you just take a moment to try to take it, with some sense of gravity, then you realize how important the dream state is in terms of being able to expand your awareness and being able to move across different levels of being. So portal dreams are very important in shamanic practice. And also the prescient dreams, where you have a dream of the future. And I've had so many clients that are prescient dreamers. And, it's so funny because, I have clients that are much better psychics than I am, I'm like, how come I don't have those dreams? But luckily at least I have some value because I can help them make sense of it. Because one of the things that happens is when people have prescient dreams, big dreamers that are prescient dreamers, they can get very disorganized by it. And because they don't know, like people, like in ordinary, it's hard for me to remember but I do know that it's true. In ordinary cultural reality, dreams are just dreams, they're not this like major, like important place of experience, and people just tend to discount the dreams and whatever happened whatever's happening in the dreams. And then people who are like really presented with huge amount of information within the dream time don't have anywhere to go with it, and they get disorganized by it. I mean, I've had so many people come into my practice that are coming in for insomnia. But it's not insomnia. They're afraid to go to sleep because they're afraid they're going to have the prescient dream. And one of the things that I've seen frequently with my clients is that one of the reasons they feel so upset by the prescient dreams, like they'll dream that something bad will happen, and then the bad thing happens. And they're convinced that they created it. And nothing could be further from the truth. What's actually happening there, if you want me to go into that? You want me to? From what I can tell, what's actually happening there is that there is this larger matrix of experience of potentials that become evident in the dream time, or in as you alter your state of awareness, as psychics will do. Like, psychics will often be able to just kind of read a little bit into the future because they are aware. So here's experience here where you are right now, but there's this larger set of potentials that is available and can be read if you look at it in an altered state of awareness outside the conscious mind. And that's basically what the dreams are doing. They're bringing the state of awareness into that expanded state of understanding where there's all these potentials that exist and can be read. And that's what's happening with the prescient dreams. And if people begin to understand, okay, well, there's these potentials and I'm just reading them or I'm just perceiving them, then they have so much relief from thinking that they have created these bad things that are happening. So if you know anyone who has prescient dreams and they're worried about that, offer them this bit of understanding. It's very relieving for them. The other thing that can happen in shamanic dream practice, or that happens within dreams in shamanism, is that, as I've mentioned before, in shamanic practice, one of the main aspects of the practice is to establish a relationship with what in shamanism are called helping spirits. And helping spirits are distillations of the unseen power that lie behind the forms of nature. And so for instance, every tree has a spirit to it. Every rock has a spirit to it. Every lake has a spirit to it, because there's some unseen power behind the surface level of experience that is, from a shamanic perspective, maybe even, definitely as important as what's happening on the surface level of experience. And so in shamanic practice, there's different practices, either with plant medicine or with the shamanic journey, where you seek to move into this altered state of awareness that is very like the dream, and connect and you do that with the intention of connecting with a guide in the form of nature, that takes the form of nature. And in shamanism, this is called a helping spirit. And so it's not unusual that a helping spirit might announce itself in a dream. And so then the shamanic practitioner would either journey or work within the dream to understand the nature of the power that the spirit is bringing them, and then begin to work with that helping spirit in their practices. This is something that I teach in the shamanic studies classes that I teach, is, a shamanic practitioner is not really doing anything except grooming their energy system properly so that they can become a proper channel for the power of the helping spirits to move through them and to help and to work to help them help other people, right? So having a guide or a helping spirit or a teacher arrive in a dream is a big deal. It's a wonderful opportunity, and it's a way that the guides will present themselves to people who are working shamanically. Interestingly, also, I have found in my practice, especially my depth hypnosis practice and my applied shamanic practice, other kinds of issues will often present themselves that have to do with, maybe sometimes a spirit attachment would announce itself in a dream. Like if someone is carrying someone else's energy in their system, or if there's an actual spirit attachment, it will become evident in the dream. And that is super helpful information to have, especially if you know what to do in order to release the spirit attachment, which shamanic practitioners learn how to do. So, so dreams really become these sources of information and ways of connecting with the larger experience of reality, so that the shamanic practitioner can be more effective in their work. And I want to tell you a story about a client that I had who was definitely called to the shamanic path through her dreaming. And she was one of the people who came to me because she was having prescient dreams. And she came to me, she said she wanted to, again, come to me for insomnia. But the fact was she hadn't slept in so long because she couldn't handle what she was seeing in her dreams, because she was one of those people that was convinced that she was making things happen. But the other thing that she would see in her dreams is she would see all of these situations where she was, working as a midwife, and she was, and the baby would die, and then she would be chased out of the group where she was, or she was an herbalist and she was burned at the stake for being a witch. There was all these past life situations that she was having so she was dreaming the future, and she was also aware of all of these different past lives where she had been persecuted for being someone who was different, someone who had sight, who had seen. And she had, there was I remember one dream where there was a past life where she was put in stocks, where they put your head in your hands, stockade, where she was put in a stockade in front of a cathedral. Like that was so with depth hypnosis, we're able to go back in time and work with these situations and help heal them. And so we started doing that, and she started realizing, okay, so this is just information that's coming in. I mean, she was a classic disorganized psychic, someone who'd been disorganized by her shamanic potentials because she had no education and no place to put the information. So we helped get her organized. Then the interesting thing is that she had a baby, and it turns out that the baby, as he got older, he was autistic, and she was really upset by this, and I said, you know what? You've got all of this capacity to be able to move beyond conscious mind awareness. Do you think you could use it to try to connect with your son? To try to go into those deep places that autistic people reside in. And she began, trying to practice that. And she was able to work with her son to the point where he was able to enter into a normal kindergarten by the time he was 5. But she was able to reach him and try to bring him forward. And he might have done that anyway, but I think that her working with her sight and being able to move across these different levels of awareness in this shamanic way of working, I think really helped him. So so that's a modern day application of shamanic experience, or an understanding of how shamanic experience in dreaming can come forward. Anyone have any questions about dreams and shamanic practice?
How is
Let me
the,
get the microphone.
oh, I'm sorry.
Just so our friends online can hear.
Yeah. How is the shamanic interpretation of dreams different from Western interpretations? I went to a Unitarian seminary in Berkeley, and there was a professor there that did a lot of dream work, and all these congregations did a lot of dream work based on his model. So I'm just wondering how they differ.
Well, in shamanic practice, you're not really interpreting dreams. You're seeing dreams actually as a reality, or as a, a doorway, or an entry into the spirit world, or into the world beyond the ordinary reality. You're not really interpreting dreams. You kind of take them at face value. And I mean, that's a traditional shamanic approach. You don't sit down and, sit down with, I'm going to go into a way of working with dreams right now that's more like that, where you're actually interpreting what the dream might mean. But in shamanic practice, the dreams are really just, again, very much like Buddhism, expanding the sense of awareness and expanding the kind of experience that you can have beyond the conscious mind. They really are seen as, in both set of practices, they are understood to be opportunities of expanding awareness. But it's a different view, right? It's like a different perspective. But they are very similar, in the two perspectives are similar, and that they see dreams as very important sources of information about the nature of reality, and dreams as something that expands one's sense of understanding about this reality and beyond. So,
You talked about, you made a clear distinction about connecting with helpful spirits. And so it made me think, oh, are there unhelpful spirits as well? And I know that, a lot of literature and stuff like that talks about in earlier days, people worrying that the spirit that they thought was helpful was actually, there had to be a lot of discernment about, is this actually a demon who's disguising themselves in a way to entrap me in some kind of way? And I just noticed that you talked very clearly about connecting with helpful spirits, so it evoked the question in my mind about how that appears in the practices that you've studied.
well, I mentioned, also you can have spirit attachments become evident in dreams, and that's a little less helpful. Generally, those are a little less helpful spirits. And in shamanic practice, you're right, there are many forms of shamanic practice, and the shamanic cosmography is described very similarly across different shamanic traditions, where you have the inner cosmography is described as a three-part world: the upper world, the middle world, and the lower world. And this is evidence of, the idea is that, you're working with the unseen power in the experience in the sky, the unseen experience of nature under the ground, and then the unseen experience in the middle world. The upper world is the sky, the lower world is under the ground, and the middle world is where we are here, right? And so in most shamanic traditions, there is an understanding that only compassionate beings are found in the upper and lower worlds, and less than compassionate beings. Compassionate beings are found in the middle world, but also non-compassionate beings. And we know that. We're living in the ordinary aspect of the middle world, and we know that, right? And so the non-ordinary aspect is really of the middle world is a place where you might find a trickster spirit or something like that. But when part of the task of a shamanic practitioner is to develop a relationship with compassionate spirits who can help them with that discernment, right? And you go to the upper or lower world to find that, to generally through the shamanic journey. to establish relationships with helping spirits that then can help you with that discernment. And actually, a lot of shamanic practice is with that discernment and helping people unwind out of unhelpful relationships with less than helpful beings, right?
Thank you. I have a question about the intention that you mentioned to set before going to sleep. Could we work with basically like a question that we have, or a feeling of stuckness outside of sleeping that like the dream world could help resolve,
Yes.
or
Yes.
any advice on that? Thank you so much.
Sure, that's called incubating a dream. So maybe let's head into talking about Western approaches to dreams, because I thought we'd spend a little time with that, since most people have that approach right now, because we are in the West. Here we are. So that process of incubating a dream is using dreams as a way to problem solve is really helpful. So again, one of the things that I do, and I teach a class on dreams and dream interpretation that I'm drawing from right here now, from here, this part forward. One of the things that you want to do is you do want to establish a connection with a mentor or a teacher. I mean, I have several methods of doing that. I mean, we could do that tonight, I guess. We should do that. Let's do that. Okay. What a good idea. To establish a relationship with a dream guide. And so then you would be connecting with that dream guide as you're asking that question. That gives you, the reason to have the guide is it gives you a focal point, and it helps you open within you that connection with that part of yourself that is wise and that does understand dreams. So let's do that. All right, let's go. Okay. As my friend Bob Thurman, I always, it's so funny, I don't know, there's something about being in this environment, I always think about Bob. I guess there's, because when we teach, sometimes we teach environments like this, and he always goes, get a meditation mode. he goes, ding. So get a meditation mode. No, I will be a little bit more gentle. Okay. So so what we're going to do in this meditation is to connect with a dream guide that you may experience as part of you, or you may experience as separate from you. But it's, ultimately, if you're a good Buddhist, there is no inside and outside anyway, right? So, but we're just going to connect with this part of yourself that understands dreams. And which you may perceive in any form. So you may perceive it as a light or a sound, or you may perceive it as an animal or a plant or a person, or you might perceive this guide as a mythic or angelic being. And the important thing to remember when you're doing this type of meditation is, all types of meditation, is to open all of your inner senses and allow yourself to know that you might be receiving information, through hearing or through feeling, not only through seeing the guide. So just allowing yourself to get settled, noticing all the places where the surface under you meets the different parts of your body. And as you do, just noticing where your breath is. Noticing as you breathe in where your breath goes, and noticing as you breathe out where your breath goes. Just allowing yourself to watch your breath move in and move out. And just allowing yourself to become aware of how your breath is like a bridge between your outer world and your inner world. And just following each breath into your inner world as you breathe in. Into that place where everything that you've ever known or felt or sensed or dreamed or imagined is recorded. And just knowing that we're here in this place to connect with the part of yourself that understands dreams, to connect with a guide who understands dreams and can help you with your dream practice. But for now, just returning to your breath, just allowing yourself to sense or feel or imagine that all around you is a sense of relaxation. And that as you breathe, you can breathe in that sense of relaxation, bringing it into your head and face on your inhale, just feeling that relaxation flowing throughout your head, down into your neck and throat, down into your shoulders and arms and hands. And on your next breath, just bringing that relaxation into your lungs, to your chest. And noticing how your heart feels as that relaxation flows through it. And down into your belly, bathing all your organs of digestion and elimination and reproduction in a soothing bath of relaxing energy. And feeling that relaxation flowing down your spine, down through your hips, through your bottom, down through your legs, and down to your feet. And just allowing yourself to sense or feel or imagine that you may be so filled with this relaxation that it's coming out of the pores of your skin and surrounding you in a cocoon or cloud of soothing, relaxing energy. And as you feel supported in this way, I'm wondering if you can sense or feel or imagine that there's a staircase before you. This staircase, you can travel along this staircase to find this guide who's going to help you understand your dreams, and which may take any form, perhaps as a light or sound, or as a mythic or angelic being, or as a plant or an animal or a person. Just knowing that this guide will take a meaning, will take a form that has meaning to you, and that you may perceive it through any of your senses. So just allowing yourself now, as I count from 10 to 1, to travel along this stair, knowing that when we reach 1, that you will be in the presence or very close to being in the presence of this guide who's going to help you understand your dreams. So 10, just finding your feet on the stair, noticing what it's made of, if it's made of wood or stone or some other material. 9, feeling your hand on something like a guardrail, and knowing that 8, you have complete control over this process. 7, knowing that at any time you can come back to the surface. But 6, knowing that you can go quite deeply because you do want to connect with a guide who can help you understand your dreams. 5, just allowing all of your inner senses to open. Your inner sense of taste, touch, and smell. Your inner sense of sight and hearing. And especially that 6th sense of just knowing. Allowing them all to open quite widely. As you begin to focus on a place, perhaps in nature, where you have felt comfortable and at peace. Just allowing yourself to let your conscious mind rest, a well-deserved rest, as you focus on this place, perhaps in nature, where you have felt comfortable and at peace. And 3, just allowing any fears or doubts to simply rest as you focus even more intently on this place, perhaps in nature, where you have felt comfortable and at peace. 2, just allowing yourself now, as you get to the end of the stair, to 1, step out into this place in nature, taking a deep breath, noticing the particular odor of this place, letting that odor bring you into deeper contact with it. Noticing the quality of the light, and just listening for any sounds. Noticing if the wind is still or if there's a breeze on your cheek. And as you're here in this place, just becoming aware of a path, a very inviting path that leads further into this place and will take you into the presence, or very close to being in the presence of this guide who's going to help you with your dreams. I'm going to count from 1 to 4, and as I do, let each number bring you closer to that guide. 1, just allowing yourself to move on this path, which may be made of sand or dirt or some other material. 2, knowing that you can trust the impressions that you're receiving. And 3, finding yourself in the presence for, or very close to being in the presence of this guide who can help you with your dreams. Just allowing yourself to let all of your senses open widely, knowing you may perceive this guide through any of your senses. And when you perceive the guide, bring the rest of your senses to this place and ask, would you be willing to help me with my dream life? To help me understand my dreams better? Would you be able to help me with my dream life and help me understand my dreams better? And just knowing you may get this answer in a variety of ways. It could be a telepathic or verbal message, or it could be a simple knowing, or it could be a change in the environment, or some action on the part of the guide. Would you be willing to help me understand my dreams and my dream life? And if the answer is yes, just resting with the guide and perceiving its nature. If it's no, don't worry, you can do this process again. But if the answer is yes, just again, perceiving the personality and the nature of the guide. And perhaps asking one more question. What message would this dream guide like to give you about your dreams? What teaching would the dream guide like to offer you about your dreams, your dream life? Again, you may hear words or receive information telepathically or through images or kinesthetically. Is there a teaching that the dream guide would like to offer you about your dreams? And just bringing this teaching and this connection back with you now as I count from 1 to 10, letting each number, 1, make your connection with the dream guide stronger, 2, and your understanding of the teaching deeper, 3, knowing that when we reach 10 that you'll be back in the room remembering everything, 4, finding yourself easily remembering the nature of the teaching and the guide, 5, 6, 7, and just allowing yourself to come back to your breath, following your breath as you breathe out back into the room, 8, taking all the time that you need, 9, whenever you're ready, 10, just open your eyes and you'll be back in the room, remembering everything. Just taking a moment to reflect on your experience. So, in terms of a dream practice, let's give you another minute, sorry. So, in terms of a dream practice that you can establish, so this idea of incubating a dream or asking a question, if you, as you're falling asleep, you can walk down that same path where you met the guide and connect with the guide and ask the question. One of the important things about incubating a question for a dream is to have it be clear. So you should have it be a one-pointed question. So if you're trying to figure out if you should move to Seattle or to Washington, you should ask, what are the conditions around moving to Seattle? Don't ask, should I move to Washington or Seattle? Like, get really clear, like have a clear one-pointed question. And don't use the word why at the beginning, because they can't answer those questions very easily. So what are the conditions around is a really good way to start a question for a dream incubation. And so then you ask that question as you're falling asleep. And then again, as when you wake up, you have a recording device or a journal, and without moving too much, you review the dreams that you've had or the feeling that you have upon waking, and bring that experience back to the question and see how the question may have been answered. Really important to know when you're incubating dreams that you may not get the question answered immediately. You may have to ask it several times. I always say 21 days. If you don't get a question within 21 days, you're not going to get the answer. I just keep asking, but it takes some time. So that's a really good practice to develop. And then in terms of interpreting dreams, so we're going to shift gears here. And so when you're looking at a dream and you're trying to understand what it means, it's really important. Now we're moving out of shamanism, Buddhism. Right now we're bringing it into ordinary dream life of Western people. It's really important to look at the images, like the nouns. So for instance, I'll give you an interpretation of a client, this very short dream that they had. And this is a guy who had a lot of self-worth issues. Like he couldn't hold a job, he was always late. He was really having a hard time. And he kept working with depth hypnosis, trying to make a change. And I kept asking him, be sure to watch your dreams. He came in with a dream, finally, and it was just a scrap of a dream. And he said, I dreamed that I was Mario Andretti's little brother. That was the dream. So what we're going to do in that dream is we're going to open the images or the nouns, Mario Andretti and little brother, right? So we're going to ask, who is at I actually didn't know who Mario Andretti was. So I asked, who is Mario Andretti? And he said, well, he's the most famous the best race car driver ever. I said, okay. And so what does it mean that you're his little brother? And he said, it means that I'm not a total loser. Yes, right? The dreams delivered. It was like all of the work that we had done, but it was the dream. It was the dream that brought him into this sense of new way of being. And it was because I'd asked him to watch his dreams, and he was diligent in watching his dreams we were focusing on helping him understand how he could shift his sense of unworthiness. And there we got it, delivered. It was amazing. But the way we understood the dream was by asking, what is Mario Andretti, what is Mario Andretti, and what does it mean to be the little brother? So when you're interpreting a dream, you ask, what does this mean to me? You look at the nouns, what does this mean to me, or what does this remind me of? Those are two questions you can start with. So, I teach a much larger class. It's not that big a class. It's a class on dreams and dream interpretation, and it's actually on demand on the sacredstream.org website if you want to take it anytime. But I teach it with live Q&A a couple of times a year. But there's a whole bunch there that I can't teach right now. Like 20 minutes. I wish I could. But let me put some of those techniques from that class to work right now in interpreting a dream. Would that be okay? So you see it in action? You have a dream? And make a note. I can relate.
So for the context, I took a soul retrieval class last weekend with Isa. So it was pretty intense work, and I got to recall some soul parts that I have lost 20 years ago, and another one more than 20 years ago. So I'm thinking my dreams might have to do with that. So it's pretty intense. I was inside this building, and I think there were some other people around there too. It was pretty crowded, and then a big crowd of people also walked in, and I think it was mostly men. And I recognized one very big, kind of scary-looking man, but I had a feeling that that was kind of a protector. I had a recognition. I was like almost good to see that person. And then somehow the other groups of men that walked in kind of got like aggressive and scary. So me and some other people needed to run. So we were like, I don't know, like going to different rooms. And then we were outside, and then had a sense that they were looking for us. And then I saw them, and then I was like, okay, let's crawl. And we were crawling, and then some of them saw us. So like we got up and then running again. And then I saw a car, and then we got into a car, and I was the last one to close the door. And I think I was sitting on the passenger seat, and there were some people in the back. And another one of those scary bad parts, like they came in, and then I was gonna close the door, and one of them like attacked. And so I closed the door and hit the person with the door. And it got pretty violent, and I'm sorry. I think I killed the person, like with the door. And then I woke up.
Okay. So what do you make of this dream?
So I thought that maybe because I'm going through a lot of changes, and maybe some parts, like exiled parts, they're kind of freaking out. They thought like I'm gonna kill them, like, or something. And then like maybe there's some other parts like that I'm somewhat protecting them too. And yeah, so there's just kind of those parts maybe a little scared that I'm gonna get rid of them.
Okay.
That's what I thought.
Okay. So let me, do you mind if I talk to the class? So to give you context, soul retrieval is a process of healing trauma. And from a shamanic perspective, soul parts are parts of the self that can get away from the trauma when it's happening, will get away. And that's why people from a shamanic perspective go into shock, because part of them is left, part of their spirit is left. And often the spirit will come back, but sometimes the soul parts don't come back. And that's when you have the experience of PTSD after traumas, because the part that left might still be caught in the trauma somehow and telegraphing back through nightmares or flashbacks or lost time, the experience of the trauma. So soul retrieval is a process of going outside of time. The shamanic practitioner goes through the shamanic journey outside of time and finds those soul parts and brings them back. So that's what we were doing in the workshop. So from my perspective, so I totally honor how you're looking at this, but I think that one of the things that we're seeing in this dream is what is the primary emotion in the dream?
It's just like no break. I just had to like keep running, like, just trying to survive and trying to stay alive.
And what would you say is the emotional state in that process of trying to survive?
It's probably fear.
Right.
Yeah.
So it looks to me that one of the things that the dream might be bringing you is your understanding of this part of you, or this experience of fear. Like, just like becoming congruent with how afraid you might actually be. Would you say that fear is something that you are aware of as part of your experience over the course of your life?
Yeah, that's been running my life a lot, and I've been working on it like a lot recently too.
So I think that, so we could look at, so I think it's important to like note the fear. Now we can say, so let's do what I just said in terms of asking about the nouns. So there was a lot of people, a big crowd of men. What do you make of the fact that there were so many men? In terms,
They seem pretty violent and like kind of like exiled self, like pretty like a broken kind of,
like they were kind of disconnected, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and the man that you kind of recognized, who was like a protector but also aggressive, does he remind you of anyone?
Not really. But I had a recognition.
And in your life, what has your relationship to men been like generally?
Not so great.
Do they make you feel afraid?
Maybe I might be a little kind of like subdued and disconnected about it, but I don't, but maybe, yeah.
So do you think this dream might be helping you look at your relationship to men and your fear of men? Do you think there could be something to understand there?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. But I was upset that I killed that.
Yeah, we're getting there, yeah. So there's something also really important here, especially because there's so much fear in the system. There's so much fear. There's no boundary to the fear, right? So you're trying to put down a boundary, right? Sorry, would you say that in closing the door of the car that you might have been trying to put a boundary between you and the person?
Yeah, and also like protecting the others that was in the car too.
Right, okay. So have you ever had the experience of being afraid of doing something that is good for you if it's going to harm another person?
Yeah, boundary has been a big lesson. Yeah.
And would that be something that might happen, the difficulty putting down a boundary to someone who might be scaring you or harming you or having negative intention? Is that something that you might hesitate to do if it might harm them?
Yeah, I think I've previously had patterns of like kind of in expense of myself, just not to make other people uncomfortable.
Okay. So right there, I think that's the place where I would focus in terms of if you're going to work, do more work. So first of all, you're becoming aware of how afraid, how much of the role of fear plays in your life, right? So that's important to allow that to be there. And, stay with your guide and, don't, feel the presence of your guide, supporting you as you're doing that. But then looking at this issue of feeling, being reluctant to protect yourself if it's going to have a negative effect on someone else. Like, right there, that's like so important,
Oh, thank you.
right?
I'm really glad. I
Yeah.
thought like, oh my God, all my Buddhist practices gone. I killed somebody in my dream. I was like, it's really-
Yeah. Well, I mean, boundaries, yeah, I'm glad you had that dream, because I do think it's about the boundary and about you being willing to sacrifice your own well-being in order not to harm another person, even when you're terrified, even when you're being aggressed upon, even when people are being aggressive toward you. Like you're not, the level of self-preservation's like not as strong as it might be. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So then what you could do is you could ask in a dream, how can I develop a greater sense of self-preservation? What do I need to do in order to be willing to put down boundaries, even if it's not something that the other person wants? Like those kinds of questions you could take into the dream and ask with your dream guide as you're falling asleep. And you could do that in a journey because you know how to journey, right? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Just clearing the space. Yeah. Okay, so you see how amazing dreams are, right? Thank you for sharing that. And just asking a few questions and focusing on one other thing that we did there is we focused on the dominant emotion in the dream. So sometimes the emotion is the most important aspect of the dream. It may not be necessarily one of the images, but if you have a strong emotion coming out of a dream, it's something to examine or focus on. And from a Buddhist perspective, what you might do is you might do a Vipassana meditation where you do your shamatha to settle your mind, and then bring in the strong emotion into the shamatha space, and then ask questions about it and let information come in. That would be one way to work with the dream from a Buddhist perspective. And from a shamanic perspective, you would work with the journey, and where you would alter, the shamanic journey is a process of altering your state of awareness with a repetitive sound, usually a drum. At this beat. And so you do the journey and ask, you go to a known guide, in this case it would be the dream guide, and ask a question like, what do I need to address within myself in order to be able to be self-preserving, even if it's at the expense of someone else's well-being, right? This is a place where, I mean, I understand where you're caught, but really, I know there's this idea that in Buddhism, that you've always got to be thinking about the other person, but in this case, what I always say is you can't let go of the self until you heal the self, right? So this is something that you need to heal in order to be able to let go of yourself. You're like terrifying yourself by thinking you have to let go of your own self, right? So we have to heal this, and then you'll be able to let go without, you will get there, I promise you. But you won't get there by believing that your well-being is not very important, right? I know that that is a common issue that people in Buddhist practice have, because you're trying to let go of the self, trying to let go of the self, but you cannot do that until you heal the self. You cannot. Please, 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 please. Yeah. Sorry, I'm a big advocate for healing. Okay, anyone have any questions coming out of that?
Hi. I'm a very dream enthusiast. Yeah, is that the right way?
Wonderful.
I observe my dreams. Most of the time, I'm aware that I'm dreaming, and sometimes it gets very confusing, but then I let go within the dream. And one time I had a dream that I became a diamond cutter. And the references in Buddhism, there's this diamond cutter thing. And I literally had a diamond in my hand, and I was cutting it with a knife, like glass knife. And I was referring myself as a diamond cutter. And I wanted to ask, as a Buddhist, what could it mean?
Well, what does it mean to you as a Buddhist?
I Googled it, and and diamond cutter is sort of someone who's breaking the illusion. As like cutting a diamond is impossible, but then in Buddhism, it's a reference to breaking the illusion and sort of like recognizing the truth. But I'm not sure if I'm
But
a diamond
that was
cutter.
what Google said, right? But,
Yeah.
but what do you say?
I keep asking myself, what does it mean?
Right.
What does it refer to?
So as a Buddhist, what is the diamond?
It's my true Buddha nature.
Okay, so
I
then
don't
you're,
know.
so then if you're a diamond cutter in your dream, so what does it mean that you're cutting your Buddha nature?
Oh my God, I don't know. Is it literally I'm cutting my Buddha nature?
I don't know, you're cutting into,
But
but I mean, it seems like you're piercing into it, right? It seems like you're moving into it, right?
I was proclaiming myself as a diamond cutter, but then I had a question because I was aware that I was dreaming, and I'm like, why am I saying that? And somehow, this collective energy was giving me this message as like, you're the diamond cutter, but this is not something to be proud of, but be aware of it, because you are now the diamond cutter. Yeah,
So if you're a diamond cutter, what does that mean about your relationship to your Buddha nature?
Oh yeah, so that brings my grandfather, who was a Buddhist monk, Hinayana, I presume. And I think I'm the one who has to continue but must continue the Buddhist background within the family, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, that's coming to me as you asked. Yeah.
Well, so that's probably more relevant to you than Google.
Oh yeah, okay. It must, okay,
Okay.
yeah.
So
Thank
there
you.
you go, right?
Yeah.
So also being a diamond cutter is one that shapes the diamond, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know,
Yeah, not, yeah,
right.
absolutely.
It's not necessarily like a violent thing. It's like,
Yeah.
it's a, you're shaping it. And
Yeah.
if if you have this legacy, this ancestry that you are shaping,
Oh,
you know.
yeah, that makes sense.
Does that make
And the
sense?
primer emotional vibe, as we say, the vibe was very encouraging. It was positive. It was somewhat elevating. And there was this ring of fire. This trees are aligned in a circle, and they were on fire, and I was circling around it, and it was not scary. And there's this diamond cutter reference, and yeah, so this really interests me, and I think I got the answer. Thank
Yeah.
you.
You're welcome.
I
Yeah.
think it's my grandfather sort of like, hey,
Yeah.
you're the next
Yeah.
me,
And
or
that you're shaping the Buddha
yeah,
nature, right?
not necessarily.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you. So that gives us a good tip to leave you with. I would not necessarily go to, yeah, no Google. No, but dream dictionaries are really not the place to go for help. The place to go for help is asking yourself these questions. That's going to give you the answer. So we have concluded our lesson on dreams. We have the Buddhist understanding of dreams and dream yoga as an expansion of the practice. We have the shamanic understanding of dreams as doorways into non-ordinary reality and a way of receiving information about non-ordinary reality in order to be able to, in both cases, in order to deepen our awareness of who we are as we are living our lives in this awakened state, we can really work with the world of dreams to enhance and deepen our understanding of who we are as beings. So, and you have a dream guide that you can work with and have your, work with your dream practice. And I wish you sweet dreams. Let's go ahead and close circle. The sun is a circle. The sun is a circle. The moon is a circle. The moon is a circle. The earth is a circle. The earth is a circle. The drum is a circle. The drum is a circle. We are a circle within a circle. We are a circle within a circle. Just feeling your dream guides behind you. We are a circle within their circle. We are a circle within their circle. Thank you, everyone.